melt is when I hold you away.
Well, today on Racing Legends podcast, I have Zoe Cadman from XBTV, one of my favorite public handicappers, does a great job. Zoe, I don't know if you remember, but I met you and Miggs at Preakness. I think we might have been having some Heinekens 4 or 5 years ago on a really rainy day. But it's great to see you again. Thanks for doing this.
Good memory. Very good memory. Yes, it was a very rainy day, that Preakness. In fact, Mig just texted me today. He's doing great.
He's a great guy. You guys were a great team together, too.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Do you like working with other jockeys?
I like working with Mig. He's very good at what he does.
Yeah. So it's not a blanket statement. You don't like working with every jockey, huh?
I mean, not many jockeys do it, and not many jockeys do it well. Mig's very well spoken, and he's a great guy.
Yeah. Well, one thing, one of the many things I love about you, you got a great accent. Let me give your quick biography. You were born in South Africa, Johannesburg, came to England when you were 6 with your twin brother. You weren't really horsey, your family, but you like ponies, and your brother, I guess, doesn't like horses at all. But you found your way into the steeplechase world. And this is what I find interesting, is that you felt the English game was closed, that you didn't know anyone. It was hard to get anywhere. So you ended up contacting Michael Dickinson at Fair Hill, and that's how he told you to come. And that's your first start in America. You're working horses at Fair Hill, beautiful place. You decided to do your bug in Chicago. You felt there was too many women riders in Mid-Atlantic. You wanted to try something new. You went to Chicago, had an incredible run there. You were hot bug. You won a meet at Sportsman's Park, the now defunct Sportsman's Park, great track with a very long stretch. But you were competitive at Hawthorne and Arlington too. And then you retired as a very young jockey. You kind of retired on top in that you were still healthy. You didn't wait, for an injury. And you've been pretty much in the broadcasting business. You've done a little, I guess you help people pick out horses as well. You hustle in the game. But did I get most of that right, Zoe?
Pretty much, yeah. I think you got it all. It was Hawthorne I won the meet at. Sportsman's was great. Yeah, I came to England when we were 6, with my parents as well, obviously, not just me and my brother, and lived in the south of England and had ponies as a kid. I mean, I can't complain whatsoever, but at that time, England was not very gracious to female jockeys or anything like that. You had to know someone, and I didn't know anyone. So I was like, oh, sod this, and hopped on a plane and came to the States. Yeah. And then I realized I didn't know as much as I thought. So working for Michael Dickinson was fantastic. He's a little bit crazy, but I learned an awful lot. And I went to a lot of tracks in the year and a half I worked for him.
Yeah. Well, you may not have any memory of South Africa because you left when you were 6. But you were there at a very critical time in history. But you probably have no recollection of that at all. Is that true?
I wouldn't say that. My parents kept a house there for years. So we went back. And one of the main reasons that they wanted to leave was because my brother would have had to gone into the service as soon as he turned 18. So that was mandatory at that time. And Mum got homesick. So we came back to England. As soon as she got back to England, she wanted to go back to South Africa. So you can't have it all.
Right. Are you a South African citizen? British?
Nope.
No.
English.
I'm
an American citizen as well now. I waved the flag.
Great. Yeah. So but your accent is a little South African, isn't it? There's a little bit of
no. I mean, people say that. I'm like, no. Just because no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, it's probably more American than anything now, according to my mother.
No, you have a great accent. But American racing fans, we love British accents. We love those accents. I mean, there's been so much success by race callers from overseas, or I know Millie Ball, I believe, is from England as well.
Yes, Millie's quite posh. She's posher than me. I love Millie. She's posh. Yes. But when people confuse us, it's a compliment.
Oh, she's great. And I love the whole HRTV crew, because that was the station that I had. And I'm very partial to Aaron Vercruyze. John White. You guys had such a good time.
Yeah.
Online. But let's get back to riding. So so you came to America. You're in Fair Hill, and what did you learn from Dickinson? Now he was a former steeplechase rider himself, so he knew something about riding, right?
Yeah, it wasn't so much riding. It was the day-to-day American way, as far as reading the form, as far as pace. Like he'd kiss us out and walkie-talkies and yell fractions, so we had a little bit of an idea of how fast we were going. When I first came over, if someone said go 3/8 and 36, I was like, what's 36? So just no idea about any of it, to be perfectly honest. And learning how to read the racing form, like I'd go down to his house, and I started in South Carolina, and we'd have a couple of Heinekens. He'd be like, now, Zoe, this is the form. And I'm like, well, what are all those numbers? And he'd like show me the numbers and how to read it. So it was a big learning curve for me when I first came over, because I literally didn't have a clue.
Yeah. Dickinson's quite an innovator in the game, because he was one of the first guys in the Mid-Atlantic to train kind of off track. I don't even know if you consider Fair Hill off track, but also he was involved in developing artificial surfaces, and we're seeing more and more of those. So he was quite an innovator in the game, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. He's the mad scientist. He probably has the best surface in the country, and that is Tapeta. Actually, in the world, if I'm being honest. They're going to install Tapeta here at Santa Anita, and it's a really good surface, and he adjusts it to the climate that you race in. So he's got surfaces all over the world, and him and his wife Joan, it's basically her company now. She does it all with Miguel, and they're going to install it everywhere. It's fantastic.
Yeah. Are you supportive of when tracks are putting in these artificial surfaces? Now I know a lot of the bettors couldn't stand when Gulfstream did it 2 years ago now, I guess, because it's just a different pace. It's a different handicapping challenge to PETA. But are you supportive in general of artificial surfaces?
It's like everything, you have to get used to it. And out here in Southern California, they jumped the gun when they put in the surfaces and didn't put it in correctly at the end of the day. And you can't have 3 different surfaces on the same circuit. So, I mean, eventually we'll get it right. We'll have to. We're going to put one in on the training track here and go from there. I like dirt racing, but it's hard to argue the fact that synthetic racing is safer. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah. I love the fact if you handicap a turf race one day and it comes off, I love when they have synthetic, because you don't get as many scratches. So the races, don't just fall apart. So you might go from 12 horses to 10 horses, but at least it's still a fun event to handicap.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, exactly. And that's the whole idea. That's why it's worked so well down at Gulfstream.
Exactly.
Because they get a lot of rain in the summer and they can just run. It's great.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about why you decided to go to Chicago. So I would have thought, because females have always done pretty well in the Mid-Atlantic. Andrea Seafelt did well. We had a woman named Mary Wiley back when I was young, scrappy little rider. She rode for Dale Capuano. Forrest, after your riding days, has done really well. I guess Maryland riders guys like Dick Small would give women female riders a chance. But you felt like you wanted to go to Chicago. Why'd you want to go to Chicago?
I fell in love with Arlington Park, and I went and worked for Michael Stidham at Arlington, and he told me he would put me on my first winner, which he duly did, the first one I rode. And I went from there, and everyone said it was tough to break in. We've had a couple of girls here before. They haven't done any good. And I'm like, well, we'll see. Yeah. So, yeah, that was basically the idea. I mean, who wouldn't want to break in at Arlington Park?
Yeah, it's a beautiful check. You must get sad when you think it's Arlington and Sportsman are no longer here. We lost a little bit of our history.
I didn't mind so much about Sportsman's, but Arlington definitely.
So when you started to ride and you were a bug, I know you rode steeplechase in England, so you didn't have the English style. How does a jockey go about getting their own style? I guess a lot of it might determine who you're riding for. I guess maybe Stidham had something to do with the riding style that you had.
I really didn't have any style. When I first came over, I'd never really ridden a proper race, like a flat race or anything. And that was the thing with Michael as well. It's like, you can't look like a a monkey on a horse, you have to be flat backed and you have to be good. So he would video us and we'd have to we'd be galloping with our backs flat on the saddle. And, you've got to get low and you've got to look good and you've got to ride a good race. And so that was drilled into me as soon as I arrived. Do not look European. Yeah. And I didn't.
Yeah. So. Were you natural lightweight?
I didn't eat for a while.
That's not natural.
I mean, I'm short, but I've never been that skinny girl with knobbly knees. No.
Yeah.
When you have the bug, you've got to be like 105 pounds. No, I was never. I was when I had the bug. I just didn't eat.
Would you like to see that change and the weights moved up?
No.
No, it's fine the way it is. Yeah.
No, because the weights move up, you got bigger guys coming in. That's all. The guys, like the older guys like Mike Smith, that's going to help them a couple of pounds. It's definitely going to help the guys that do it the right way. But at the end of the day, if the minimum weight is 120, you've got guys that are 140 coming in. It's never going to change anything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how about in France, for non-stakes race, women have I think a 3-pound allowance for weight. And it's a way to get women more opportunities to ride. Would you be supportive of that in America?
Why?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's silly. I mean, great. I mean, go over there and get a weight break. Hey, good. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not necessary, is it? Unless you're just really a bad rider.
Yeah.
That's going to help you. I mean, it might give the trainers a little bit of incentive to put you on. Sure. I mean, if they want to do it, it's fine. But is it necessary? No. There are a lot of good jockeys. There are a lot of bad jockeys. I don't care if they're male or female. Boy jockeys can be bad. Girl jockeys can be bad. You're either a good jockey or a bad jockey. Yeah.
But horse racing is one of the only sports where women compete against men on an equal basis anywhere in the world. And I mean, in any other sport, women have their own leagues, their own competition. So, I don't think women need a break, but they are asked to go toe to toe with, I guess with men. You're like, so what?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, they do it in dressage, show jumping, free day eventing. Mm-hmm. Pretty much any horse sport, you go toe to toe. Mm-hmm. It's all about finesse more than anything. I mean, you're not the one running, you're not the one jumping, you're on their back. And I think women sometimes have the advantage, if I'm being perfectly honest. Maybe we should give the men the weight break.
Yeah. So you think, and I agree. As an owner, I always use female riders. I always felt that we overvalue the physical. Now there are some times in the stretch drive when it looks like a jockey may give their horse an edge in the stretch drive, but I think generally the races are won with the tactics. The 90% that come before that last 4 or 5 strides really make the race, and I think we overvalue the physical sometimes.
Yeah, I think we definitely do. Well, I don't, but a lot of people do. And yeah, I mean, there could be a girl and you watch her come down the lane, you're like, oh God, oh, that's awful. And then it could be a guy and you're like, oh, that's awful. So it doesn't really matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, it does. Well, one of my favorite riders of all time is Earlie Fires. And he was truly a different, unique rider, because generally, when you're handicapping a race, if the pace is too fast, usually the front runners they weaken, and then it favors horses that are stretch runners. Earlie Fires seemed to defy all conventional wisdom. His horses would go fast and faster and faster, and they wouldn't stop. Since you were up close with Earlie, were you able to figure out how Earlie was able to do that?
He was a very good judge of pace, and he used every trick in the book to get these horses to go. He was great. I mean, now I think if he was riding, he probably wouldn't ride very much because he kept multiple whip bands. But that was back in the day, and anything went. So Earlie was great. He'd take horses to the lead that had never been on the lead, and people would be like, yeah, it's just Earlie, let him go. And that's how he won a lot of races. He was fantastic and just a very fierce competitor and a great guy.
Oh, he's a great guy. Yeah. I always felt Earlie was a little bit like Anthony Black in Philadelphia, in that sometimes he would go to lead just to let you know that this is my territory. I'm going to go to lead this time just for the next time you won't chase me. I always felt like there's kind of those head games being played. That's my territory. Do jockeys do that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think you won your first race as a jockey, right? Didn't you win? So that must have been
Yeah,
an amazing feeling.
it was great. It was easy. I mean, I'm not going to brag. I didn't have a whip. I broke out of the gate and just cruised down the backside in third or fourth, and then I started moving my arms coming down the lane, and I passed Earlie Fires. I passed Mark Guidry. I'm like, oh yeah, this is easy, and I won. The next day they gave me a whip, and it was raining and it was muddy. I dropped the whip in the gate before I went. I left the gate. I pulled all my goggles down. It was an absolute disaster. I turned around to smack my horse with my stick, and I turned all the way around. I come back in the room, and Mark Guidry goes to me. He's like, Zoe, what are you doing out there? I'm like, I guess I don't really know. So it was a learning process for sure. And the guys helped me.
So
They really did.
they didn't you hear old stories about jockeys fighting in the jocks room and the intimidation that goes on. As a woman in the jocks room, the guys ever try to intimidate you?
No, 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 no. No, not at all. They were great. I'd known them all for years, and it's not like I was 16 and I was dangerous and I couldn't ride. You know, I was a good hand on a horse. I'd been around a long time. I was 25 years old.
Mhm.
So I'd been around with these guys galloping in the morning. So they all wanted to help me. Obviously, I didn't know how to use a whip because I'd never used one in the morning. You don't hit horses in the morning. Who does that? So Eddie Razzo, God rest him, gave me his equicizer, and we went to school.
Wow.
And that was, and then he was like, God, I wish I hadn't given you that thing now.
One thing has happened over the last 20 years or so since you retired is there's a lot more Latino riders. It seems like more riders come from Central America or Puerto Rico than when you rode. When you rode, there was a lot many American-born non-Latino riders. Has the style of riding changed with a different demographic over the years?
No, I mean, they just have a very good jockey school, like down in Puerto Rico and the South American countries. It's like a farm. They just keep sending these guys over, and they're great, and they're light, and they're smart, and they're good riders. There were a lot of Latino jockeys in Chicago when I was riding.
Yeah.
You know, really, it was just like the older guys, Mark Guidry, Earlie Fires were, and you know, a few other ones. But yeah, we had a good crew with
Mhm.
us, and the guys are good riders that come over from those countries. I mean, it pretty much started with Johnny Velasquez coming over, and the Ortiz boys, and everybody else.
Yeah. So, you know, when you end up winning a meet in Illinois, and I read a quip that you had said to I forgot Chris's last name, interviewed you, but he said, and what was it like being a woman to win, you know, the meet? You're like, I felt like I won a meet. So that being a woman to win a meet didn't really measure that much for you. But anyway, what was it like when you finally won a meet and you had arrived? I mean, you were a top jockey.
It was great. I mean, you could say you've been leading rider. I was like head to head with Chris Amy the whole meet, like
Mhm.
the whole meet down to the last day. So to beat him was, I'm not going to lie, it was a good feeling.
Yeah. Did you?
I did enjoy that.
No, I'm sorry. You go first. You go first.
No, I enjoyed it. It was great.
Yeah. Well, you know, you're a very good handicapper. Whenever you say something, I listen. When you rode, did you spend a lot of time handicapping, or did you try to react to what was going on in a race as much as you could?
I mean, I did to a point. I think mainly on the circuit I was riding, I knew all the horses anyway. So it wasn't a question of having to watch replays or do anything like that. These horses ran every couple of weeks, and you knew them, and you knew the riders. You knew who drifted out of the turn, who couldn't keep their horse straight when they hit left-handed. You go inside. So those are things that you knew from riding with these guys day in and day out. So handicapping, not so much. The only thing you really look at was speed and closes. Like, am I on a speed horse? Who's going to be chasing me? This horse has never been on the lead. Why don't we try that? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And there never really was a plan. It's just what happens when the gates open.
I bet you are awesome politically talking to owners and trainers. I bet you could charm yourself and get some good mounts. And maybe if you didn't give your best ride in the world, you could talk your way back on that horse next time.
I would come back and say that was awful. I mean, I've done that. I came back. I can remember riding for Mike Stidham one day. I came back and I'm like, this horse is making a noise, Mike. He's like, what kind of noise was it making? Like a little bird. It's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, it was going cheep, cheep,
Yeah.
cheep. So we dropped the horse down, and the next time the horse won.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're talking about Mike Stidham. He's one of these guys from a handicapper's point of view. Often his horses don't show a lot of fast works or a lot of anything, but you've been around, if you've been handicapping long enough, his horses are going to fire eventually. What is the key to his success?
He's very good at getting horses fit. First time out. He's just, if you see the works, they may be 5/8 of a mile, 3/4 of a mile, but then he gallops out a mile. It's like top pleasure. What you don't see is the gallop out times. Those horses are fit as a fiddle when they run.
Right, the gallop out times. Yeah, they should probably work this. So look, you decided to retire relatively young in your career. I mean, you got a late start, but still you were doing well. It seems like that would get into your blood, winning races as a jockey, and it'd be hard to just walk away from it. What went into that decision to retire so early?
I don't think I wanted to work quite so hard, which is, I don't know. I quit, I got married, I got divorced, I moved to California. So that was basically how it went, and no regrets.
Yeah, no regrets. So, you decided to go into TV, or somehow you ended up in TV. And I mean, you're a natural for it. I mean, you have a great personality. You're effortless in front of the camera. Did it come natural, or is it something you had to really work at to find your
I mean, everything comes with a bit of practice. The Kevin Clark, who did the TV department at Arlington Park, had called me one afternoon. There was a girl that they'd hired, and they're like, this isn't working. Can you come in tomorrow? So I'm like, sure. And I didn't have a clue. Leanne Davis was doing the TV then, and she helped me a lot. And it's just getting used to things. Practice makes perfect, and no one's ever going to be perfect. You just have to go with it.
Yeah. Well, you worked for, and I mentioned this earlier, you worked for HRTV, which, I spent a lot of time, watching the races on HRTV. I love the personality. You guys didn't take yourself so seriously. You guys would tease Jeff Siegel, John White. He knew everything. It was just a great mixture of different personalities that seemed to work. Did I get that right? Was it a fun bunch of folks to work with?
Oh, it was great. We all miss HRTV to this day. In fact, I have a good friend of mine, Becky Witzman, who is the senior producer at FanDuel now. And we went and had a couple of drinks and margaritas the other night. She's like, I still miss it. It was so great. Yeah. And we all do. Like, it was great. We had a great team, camaraderie. We did a good job.
Yeah,
and
Becky was.
Nothing lasts forever, right?
Yeah, it couldn't last forever. And I guess the game is concentrating so much, and I guess the networks had to as well. But I definitely think that HRTV was different than TVG. And when they combined, it took me a long time to adjust to TVG. I do like Matt and all those guys, and they're my race pals, even though they're on TV now as well. But I admit I've always been an HRTV person. So when they did combine, obviously, a lot of folks didn't come over. That must have been a very disappointing time in your career.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. It was tough for all of us. I mean, some people got offered jobs and they didn't want to take them. They started up XBTV. Some people went to the simulcast, and some people didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. So it was just an odd time for a lot of people, but everyone's gone their own separate ways now, and it's all worked out.
Yeah. Do you work for Santa Anita and XBTV, or is it the same? Okay, so it's both. It's the same company.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're all owned by the Stoner Group.
Okay.
First Racing.
Yeah. Oh, First. Yeah. First. They got all these names. So, as a public handicapper, what do you look for? It's a very different challenge than taking the form or even going to the paddock and looking for a bet for yourself? I guess what is your goal? Just to provide information?
That should be the goal of all handicappers, really, to provide information without just zoning in on one horse. I mean, there's always going to be a horse that you love, but generally just doesn't matter if you don't like a horse. Just give your reasons for why you like it, why you don't like the horse. Should be fairly simple.
Yeah. You seem to be willing to think outside the box and use your visual skill. The other day, and I messaged you, congratulations. It was the last race at Santa Anita, and Kyle Fry was on a horse, and I forgot exactly what you said. But you liked the way he looked, and you're like, he's going to put him on the lead today, and I think he can go a long way. And he won it, and I think he paid $18 or something great. So are you looking for those visual cues that kind of set you apart from the numbers players?
I'm a very visual handicapper, which is why I absolutely suck at exotic wagers like pick 6 and pick 4s and pick 5s. I generally like to just bet to win.
Yeah.
And I love betting on 2-year-old maidens in general, and horses that I see that I like in the paddock.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically it.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to be said for that strategy, because I'm the same way. I'm strictly a win player. And if you bet to win, if you like a horse, it's over. You don't have to worry about anything else. But if you're betting other bets, you got to put a lot of time into other horses within that race. Or if you're playing pick 6s or pick 3s, you got to handicap races. You may not have strong opinions about those races, but you have to come up with them if you're going to try to tie that horse together. I just think win betting is easier, and if your opinion is right, you win, and if it's not, you lose.
Yeah, it's you live or die by your opinion, right?
Yeah,
and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've noticed about you seem relatively optimistic, at least on air and from what I've read. But horse players and people in the racing game, we tend to be a little pessimistic and doomsayers. The world's coming to an end, racing is going to die. You seem to usually remain optimistic. Do you remain optimistic about the future of racing?
Ooh, the future of racing, that's a subject we could get into. I mean, listen, we're going through a tough time right now. Everyone's got their fingers crossed that Breeders' Cup goes off with no tragic incidents on either day, before or after. It's a tough time, especially out here in Southern California. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Everything is under a microscope.
Yeah.
So, and it's been under a microscope all year. They had a tough time at Churchill. They had a tough time in Saratoga this summer. And now Breeders' Cup is here in Southern California, where we had a tough time a few years ago when everyone else was saying, hey, that's your problem out there. I'm like, well, you better beware, because it's coming your way.
Yeah.
So it's hard to put your hand up and say, I love horse racing, which we all do, and argue its case when you see, these horses breaking down.
Yeah.
It's a tough argument to make to a sane person, especially if you're talking about the dirt versus synthetic. How can you argue that dirt racing is great when you see what happened in Saratoga and you could be running on a safer synthetic surface? There's no argument to be made unless you're completely, crazy.
Yeah, we're going to make some difficult decisions. But you remind me, racing's kind of like that family that they only get in fights when they go in public and they start throwing fights. Racing tends to air its dirty laundry on the biggest days it possibly can. The Derby Day, Breeders' Cup. We just seen, and maybe we're snake bitten. But were you supportive of the HISA regulations? I know you've called for a governing body, and do you think it's worked out pretty well so far?
I mean, they've got glitches. We'll see what Rapoli's organization can do, because he's going to have a lot to say. At least he's putting his money where his mouth is, which is good to see. HISA is it's up and down and up and down. One week it's good, one week it's not. They have a lot to go through, but they're trying and they're doing as best they can. They're listening, they're taking the input. Everyone, they say be careful what you wish for. That's what everybody wanted, and now everyone's bitching and complaining.
Yeah.
So it's just going to take a while, and hopefully it's not going to be too late.
Yeah.
They are tweaking every time they get something wrong. They come back and they tweak it a little more. So
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, generally, yes, it's a good thing. We need it. Are there problems within it? Yes, of course there are.
Yeah. Well, I think it just make me and you king for a day. We would solve all the problems. But I read somewhere where you think they should condense a racing day and make it like a football game, 3 hours. You said the day is too long. If we can somehow change the tempo of things and make the races to 3 hours, and maybe that will help. Is that something that you thought about since then? I guess this was an article almost 15 years ago that I was reading.
Yeah, I mean, I can take friends of mine that know nothing about horse racing, and they're like, "When's the next race?" I'm like, 25 minutes. Why so long? Why can't we have a race every 10 minutes?
Yeah.
A buddy of mine who's since passed on advocated for match race Sundays was his thing.
Yeah.
He's like, you don't need full fields. You just need 2 horses and run them every 10 minutes. Have 10 a day.
Yeah.
He said that's all you need. I'm like, you can't have match races, Alan. It's too hard on the horses. He's like, well, I'm just saying that this could be a solution.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I wish I did.
Yeah.
And we'll just have to see what happens.
So I got started with racing with my grandfather. He lived outside of Columbus, and we would go to River Downs in Cincinnati or Beulah. And back then, he didn't buy the form, and I was, 6, 7-year-old kid. He would just buy the program. So we'd wait 30 minutes between races, and we would just stare at numbers on the program and the jockey's name. There was like no, and we would just sit there. And after a while, you got used to it. I mean, we do this, a couple times a week, and it's almost like, when people go to baseball games and can sit there for hours at a time and they don't need a lot of action. I think if you can buy into that, there's something really relaxing, almost intoxicating about it. But I don't think many people ever would get to that level where they would try that and relax next to the grandfather and just enjoy the weather and stuff.
Yeah, that's not nowadays. No one can relax. They're staring at their phones. They need action. That's not happening.
Yeah. Well, look, so this has been great. I know this is a busy week for you, and I'm so glad to see you again. I'm so glad you took the time to talk to me. But I did want to ask you, did you have any tips for Breeders' Cup? I know you're a visual person, but are there any horses that you've been looking at and you're excited to see them run this weekend?
Well, they got the draw in about an hour.
Mhm.
So
Well, no more.
we're going to find out. I mean, Arabian Night looks great for Bob Baffert in the Classic. Zandon looks good in there. Let me think. In the 2-year-old fillies, all eyes will be on Tamara from the Dick Mandela barn.
Mhm.
I'm going to try and beat her with just FYI for Bill Mott, because they're going 2 turns and this filly's proven and she's a little bigger. And I love Tamara. She's probably going to beat me anyway, but I'm looking for a bit of a price in there. Chad Brown is all over search results for him. Adair Manor going forward in the distaff. It's going to be a fantastic couple of days of racing. I literally cannot wait. The Euros are coming over. Mostadaf will probably lead the charge for Gosden in Spiral. Mostadaf will go on the turf in Spiral in the mile. I know the Euros just love her. We'll see what King Steel can do. He just won the Champion Stakes, coming back on short rest for Roger Varian. It's going to be great.
It is.
There are a lot of good races. Don't sleep on Speedboat Beach. Don't sleep on Clariere for Asmussen.
Yeah.
There will be some prices. That
Yeah.
I can guarantee you.
There always is.
Yeah.
We complain that, racing is its own enemy and there's a lot of things that racing does wrong. But one thing they got right is when they spread that day out and made it into a 2-day kind of like festival, they added some events. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of races that are very difficult to handicap.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the mile is going to be impossible. You've got the dirt mile. Practical Moves going in there. He looks terrific. Just coming off his prep. We've not seen him since he was scratched out of the Derby. So, yeah, there will be many, many ways to go.
Yeah. Last questions, though. I read somewhere where one of your heroes is Frank Dettori, and sometimes you read stuff online that's not necessarily true. But I love the way he rides. Great style. I love listening to him talk. He's such a charming way of talking. It's got to be exciting for you to be able to watch him up close in Santa Anita for next. I don't know how long he's there for, but it sounds like he's going to be there for a while.
Yeah, he's definitely going to be here for a while. Frankie's a very good skier, so we plan to go skiing. We went skiing last year. He just fine. I literally took his boots off him the other day. He donated them to the Thoroughbred Charities of America. We're going to auction them off. And I'm like, yeah, those ones. So, and he signed them, and literally I took them off his feet. So we got those to auction off. And it's just fun to have him. There's no one like Frankie.
Yeah. So when he rides, is he very similar to Rispoli and Frezu, the other European riders? Is he, or is he just different? Is Frankie much different than those guys?
I mean, Frankie's been around a lot longer, and the one thing about Frankie, there's no pressure right now. Rispoli sometimes tends to overthink things a little bit. He's an excellent rider, but he can put himself under pressure. Frezu, I think we're just starting to see what he's got. He's a very good rider as well. So they're not dissimilar, not by any means. But temperament-wise, they are dissimilar. I mean, they're all Italian, but yeah.
Is there
no one's like Frankie.
No, he's so charming. Is there anyone there that's kind of underrated and you like when he's on your horse, he or she's on your horse, because the betters maybe don't give him the respect they deserve?
I mean, Cal Frey's a very good rider. Diego Herrera, he's good out of the gate. I mean, there are a lot of underrated riders. Say we'll have Flavian back, but secrets out on him.
Yeah.
JJ Hernandez, leading rider, he's good. So there's always value. I mean, Joe Bravo always pops at a price. He's got more experience than most of the guys in the room.
Yes, he does. He's another showman too. Joe's a charming guy as well. But
yeah.
Well, Joe, so look, this has been great. Great to see you again. Best of luck on the horses on Breeders' Cup, and maybe are you going to come to Preakness? Maybe I can see you in person again one of these days.
I'd love to come to the Preakness again. I just realized. Look, I have Burt Reynolds over here. A friend of mine gave me this. It's a naked Burt Reynolds. If you're wondering what that is on my piano, it's a joke, and it's a naked Burt Reynolds. So
you're too young to idolize. Burt Reynolds is my generation. Yeah, he was an old man by the time.
I know, some friends gave me that, and that's just like, it's funny.
Almost seen your recommendations of some good Burt Reynolds movies. See,
yeah.
I used to love him back in some iconic 70s movies. So, anyways, I took more time than you promised me. So I really appreciate you doing this, and I hope to talk to you soon.
All right, lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much.
It was great, so thanks. Take care.